They say marriage is a promise, but karma does not deal in promises. It deals in returns. When two people meet, the threads between them have already been spun, not by accident, not by fate, but by the echoes of 1,000 silent choices. Choices they forgot they made. Choices made before names were spoken. Marriage is not the beginning. It is a consequence. The karma of longing, the karma of loneliness, the karma of joy half tasted in a previous life and left unfinished. One does not choose a partner. One meets the mirror, and sometimes the mirror shows love, other times it shows debt, and often both. In marriage, the soul does not say, "I do." The soul whispers, "I remember." Do you wonder why you ache in love? It is not because of what is happening. It is because of what has happened. The karma of old wounds wrapped in the scent of new skin. The karma of comfort forged in the same fire as conflict. Some unions are soft like rivers, carving gently through stone. Others are storms, meant only to break what must be broken. Both are karmic, both are necessary. Marriage teaches in the language of repetition. Until a lesson is fully lived, it will arrive again, dressed in different eyes, a different voice, the same truth. You cannot escape what you are, and you will see most clearly what you are in the eyes of the one who lies beside you. Not every night will be light. Not every silence will be peaceful, but every moment is a teacher, and karma does not forget its students. You think you fall in love, but love was already in motion before your birth. You are only the dreamer waking into it. The karma of marriage is that waking, the beautiful, painful awakening to yourself through another. Marriage is a karmic consequence, not a beginning. When two individuals stand before each other, adorned in ceremonial attire, surrounded by music, flowers, witnesses, and hope, it feels like a beginning. The beginning of a shared journey, the first steps into a new chapter of life. Yet, beneath the surface of this celebration lies something far more ancient, something that predates the vows and the photographs, a karmic current that has been quietly gathering for lifetimes. Marriage, in its deeper essence, is not a spontaneous act of love or a sudden alignment of fate. It is the flowering of seeds planted long ago, often in forgotten fields. The connection between two people, especially in the intimacy and complexity of marriage, is rarely a product of chance. It is a continuation, a returning, a consequence of actions, thoughts, emotions, and intentions that have echoed across time. What seems like a first meeting may, in fact, be the latest in a series of meetings, the resumption of a conversation interrupted by death, distance, or transformation. We live in a world that celebrates beginnings. We cherish the excitement of first glance, first kiss, first night. But karma does not operate in firsts. Karma loops, spirals, circles back. It does not forget. When two souls find themselves drawn into the gravitational pull of one another, it is not the beginning of their story. It is the unfolding of an ancient script, written with invisible ink on the parchment of the soul. Many enter marriage expecting a clean slate. They speak of new lives, fresh starts, mutual dreams. But karma does not believe in clean slates. What we call a fresh start is often the return of old patterns under new disguises. The roles may shift. He who was betrayed becomes the betrayer. She who was abandoned becomes the one who leaves. But the themes remain. Until they are resolved, they reappear again and again, wearing different names and faces. This karmic return is not a punishment. It is a reflection. Karma is the mirror that does not lie. It simply brings back to us what we have projected, consciously or unconsciously. In marriage, this mirror becomes more vivid, more intense. There is no hiding in such closeness. The karmic threads tighten in the proximity of shared space, shared routines, shared silence. What was once faint becomes pronounced. Past wounds resurface. Old joys reawaken. Unfinished lessons return to the surface, no longer content to remain buried beneath the veneer of daily life. Marriage, therefore, is not a random encounter. It is a precise and profound karmic alignment. It is not just two people coming together. It is two lineages of experience, two currents of destiny, two rivers of energy converging. Each brings into the union not just their body and mind, but their soul's history, their past loves, their unspoken regrets, the debts they owe and those owed to them. And this convergence sets the stage for both healing and unraveling. To see marriage merely as a legal or emotional bond is to miss its metaphysical weight. It is a contract not only of the present but of the past. There are marriages born of gratitude, where one soul returns to repay the kindness of another. There are those born of penance, where one soul must bear the burden of past harm inflicted. And there are marriages born of unfinished business, where the story left incomplete demands its next chapter. Some unions are sweet, others are stormy, but each carries a distinct karmic fingerprint. In this sense, even seemingly mismatched or difficult marriages are not mistakes. They are consequences. Not all unions are meant to last in the conventional sense. Some are brief but intense. Some feel like prisons, while others feel like homes. Some dissolve with time, others endure through lifetimes, yet all serve a karmic function. Even the act of separation carries its own karmic charge. Sometimes the karma lies not in staying, but in knowing when to walk away. Often people ask why love fades, why passion turns into indifference or resentment. They wonder how two people who once shared everything can become strangers under the same roof. But love does not simply fade, it completes a karmic cycle. The energy that once brought joy may exhaust its purpose, revealing the deeper task beneath it. Once the surface charm dissolves, what remains is the unfinished karmic work: forgiveness, patience, courage, humility. Marriage then becomes a spiritual crucible in which this work can take place. The rituals of marriage, the vows, the blessings, the ceremonies, are not merely cultural traditions. They are symbolic acknowledgments of this deeper journey. When two people stand before their families, their ancestors, their deities, and each other, they are entering a sacred agreement, not just to love and honor one another, but to engage with the karma they have jointly invited. These rituals may be ancient, but their relevance remains urgent. They remind us that marriage is more than a contract between two individuals. It is a convergence of life paths. This karmic view of marriage also brings a certain humility. It dissolves the illusion of control. It helps us see that we do not always choose whom we love or whom we marry. Sometimes the soul chooses for us from a depth we cannot consciously reach. We find ourselves inexplicably drawn to someone, without logic, without reason, because the bond is older than our current lifetime. That pull, that magnetic force, is karma calling. And whether we answer with joy or resistance, it will continue to call until its purpose is fulfilled. There is a strange comfort in knowing this. It means that even the most challenging marriages have meaning, that suffering, when viewed through the lens of karma, becomes transformation, that love, when lived with awareness, becomes a spiritual practice. Marriage is not just a union of bodies or emotions. It is a mirror held up to the soul, and the reflections it offers are rarely easy, but always essential. This karmic framework also releases us from judgment. It softens our criticisms of others' relationships. What we see as dysfunction or imbalance may be the very terrain through which two souls are working out ancient debts. What seems like foolish devotion may be sacred penance. What looks like a mismatch may be a perfectly orchestrated encounter designed by forces beyond the mind's grasp. We cannot know the karma of others, we can only honor its presence and its purpose. When difficulties arise in marriage, we often seek answers in compatibility tests, communication techniques, or counseling. These are helpful, but incomplete, for some challenges are not rooted in behavior, they are rooted in the soul's memory. They do not respond to logic because they are not born of logic. They must be witnessed, felt, endured, and eventually transcended. Karma is not fixed, it can evolve, but only through awareness, willingness, and love that sees beyond the present moment. To understand marriage as a karmic consequence is to accept that it is part of a larger journey, a soul's journey toward wholeness. It may bring joy or pain, connection or solitude, harmony or chaos, but it always brings growth, if we are willing to see it as such. This perspective turns marriage from a social milestone into a sacred unfolding. It asks not what we can get from our partner, but what we are here to give, to learn, to release. And perhaps this is why the sacred texts, the sages, and the seers have spoken of marriage not just as a worldly arrangement, but as a path to liberation. Not because it is always blissful, but because it is always revealing. Through its trials and tenderness, its routines and rituals, marriage becomes a mirror, held close and without mercy, and through this mirror, the soul begins to recognize its own face again and again across lifetimes. Partners are mirrors reflecting unresolved energies. When two individuals come together in the depth and intimacy of marriage, what begins to unfold is far more than the sharing of a home, a bed, or a life. It is the merging of two energetic fields, both vibrant with experience, wounds, memories, longings, and shadows. Each partner becomes, knowingly or unknowingly, a mirror, not a mirror of the surface self, the social mask, or the curated identity, but a mirror of the unseen, the internal, the unresolved. What lies dormant, unhealed, or denied within one is often reflected, activated, or intensified through the presence and behavior of the other. This mirroring is not accidental. It is deeply karmic and exquisitely precise. We are drawn to those who carry the ability to reflect something essential back to us, even when that reflection is uncomfortable, especially when that reflection is uncomfortable. Marriage, more than any other human relationship, has the power to strip away illusion. It dissolves the veil between the conscious self and the inner world that has been carefully hidden. It is in the everyday closeness, the repetition of patterns, the collision of habits and expectations, that the mirror begins to show its true image. In the early days of love, the mirror is soft. It reflects beauty, joy, excitement. We see in our partner a glowing version of ourselves. Their admiration becomes our validation. Their laughter becomes our music. This is not a deception. It is the initial reflection of our own longing to be loved, seen, and cherished. But as time passes, the mirror shifts. What once felt like perfect resonance begins to reveal friction. Their habits begin to irritate us. Their wounds begin to trigger ours. Their moods become harder to ignore, and we find ourselves asking, what changed? The answer is often that the mirror has deepened. It has moved from reflecting surface compatibility to revealing the deeper, unresolved layers of each individual. Where once we saw our ideals, we now begin to see our unfinished business. A partner who is emotionally unavailable may be reflecting our own fear of vulnerability. A partner who is critical may be echoing the voice of a parent long internalized. A partner who clings may be responding to our own fear of abandonment. These patterns may not be conscious, but they are energetically alive. Marriage has a way of drawing them to the surface like a magnet, and yet we often resist this reflection. We argue with it, resent it, blame it. We convince ourselves that if only our partner were different, we would feel better, safer, freer. But the truth is, The discomfort they stir is already within us. They are simply bringing it to light. The very things we try to escape in them are often the exact things we need to confront in ourselves. In this way, marriage becomes a spiritual tool, a lens through which we can observe our own karmic material with startling clarity. This process is rarely gentle. It can be messy, emotional, even painful. But it is sacred. The partner is not causing our suffering. They are reflecting it. They are the echo chamber of our inner dialogue, the amplifier of our subtle fears and hopes. When we see them clearly, we begin to see ourselves, not as we wish to be, but as we truly are: complex, wounded, striving, evolving. Some partners reflect strength. They show us how far we've come. They support our growth and mirror our highest potential. Others reflect pain, betrayal, rejection, not to harm us, but to awaken us, to press against the scars we've hidden, to activate the memories we've locked away. Their behavior may be difficult, but the reflection they offer is necessary. For without the mirror, the wound remains unseen, and what remains unseen cannot be healed. This mirroring happens on many levels. It happens in the way we communicate, or fail to. It happens in the way we deal with money, with power, with sex, with silence. It happens in the way we respond to stress, to celebration, to loss. Every interaction in marriage is charged with symbolic meaning. Every gesture carries the weight of previous lives, previous choices, previous stories. In this way, even the smallest conflict can open a portal into deeper understanding. We often say we are triggered by our partner, but a trigger only reveals what is already inside the chamber. The partner did not create the fear. They simply pointed to it. They did not invent the rage. They brought it out. This is not to say that all behaviors are acceptable or that abuse should be tolerated under the guise of spiritual reflection. Boundaries are essential. But within the container of safe and conscious partnership, these reflections become opportunities, not for blame, but for introspection. There is also the reflection of the positive, the unexpected kindness, the moments of deep presence, the laughter that arises from nowhere. These too are mirrors, showing us our capacity for joy, for love, for resilience. Sometimes we are startled by how much love we are capable of feeling. Sometimes we catch a glimpse of our own tenderness, not in isolation, but in how it is reflected back to us through the eyes of another. The mirror does not only show the dark, it also reveals the light we forgot we carried. What makes the mirror of marriage so potent is its consistency. Unlike fleeting relationships, marriage creates an ongoing dynamic. There is time for layers to unfold, for projections to be recognized and retracted, for the dance of reflection to move from chaos to clarity. The same argument may arise again and again, not because the partner is flawed, but because the lesson has not yet been learned. Karma recycles until it is metabolized. Marriage, by its nature, offers the space for this digestion to happen. Over time, the partner's mirror begins to polish us. The ego resists, the mind rebels, but the soul begins to awaken. We learn humility, we learn empathy, we learn to pause before reacting, to listen before judging, to see before assuming. The more conscious we become of the mirror, the more gracefully we can meet its reflection. Instead of reacting to our partner's anger, we can inquire into our own. Instead of recoiling from their sadness, we can touch our own vulnerability. This is not easy work, but it is liberating. This mirroring is especially intense in marriages that carry strong karmic bonds. In such unions, the energy between partners can be magnetic and volatile. There may be a feeling of deep familiarity, as if the soul remembers something the mind cannot explain. These relationships are rarely calm, but they are transformative. The partner becomes a vessel through which lifetimes of unresolved energy come to the surface. And with awareness, these energies can be transmuted. Even in marriages that seem peaceful on the outside, the mirror is always working. It may be more subtle, but it is present. One partner may reflect the other's suppressed dreams, their need for stillness, their forgotten creativity. They may trigger not pain, but possibility. They may awaken not trauma, but truth. The reflection is always tuned to what the soul most needs to evolve. This dynamic becomes even more apparent when the marriage faces external challenges. Illness, loss, financial hardship. All of these become catalysts for deeper reflection. The way each partner responds is a mirror of their inner world. In crisis, our truest self is revealed, and our partner becomes the witness, the companion, the reflector. They may not always reflect what we want to see, but they often reflect what we need to see. There are times when the mirror becomes too intense, when the reflection it offers becomes unbearable. In such moments, some choose to leave the relationship. This too is karmic. Sometimes, the soul knows the mirror has served its purpose. The lesson has been learned, the reflection has been integrated, or perhaps the reflection has become distorted, toxic, no longer aligned with growth. Parting ways, then, is not a failure. It is an acknowledgement that the mirror is complete. And yet, even after separation, the reflection lingers. The lessons learned in marriage shape the self that emerges afterward. The mirror may be gone, but its imprint remains. The work continues, deeper now, quieter. The partner who once stirred our deepest wounds becomes the reason we finally faced them. The partner who once made us feel small becomes the reason we grew strong. The reflection was never about them. It was always about us. In moments of clarity, we can even feel gratitude for the reflection, however painful it was. We begin to see the sacred design behind every conflict, every moment of rupture, every silent dinner and shouted fight. Not because it was easy, but because it revealed us to ourselves. And in that revelation, something sacred was born, not perfection, not eternal bliss, but awareness, and with awareness the soul grows. This understanding of the partner as a mirror reshapes how we love. It invites compassion, not just for the other, but for ourselves. It teaches us to look within before we lash out, to ask, what part of me is being shown here? Instead of, why are they doing this to me? It transforms marriage from a battleground into a classroom, from a contract into a journey. We stop trying to change the mirror and we start cleaning the glass. Not to make our partner more bearable, but to see more clearly, to love more deeply, to live more truthfully, not because marriage demands it, but because the soul does. Love returns as repetition until lessons are learned. The first time love enters a life, it feels like a spark in the dark, a surge of beauty, of recognition, of connection that defies explanation. It may come with joy or with pain, but always with intensity. We are moved, shifted, altered by the presence of another who sees into us in a way no one else seems to. And then, as quickly as it begins, it often changes. The form shifts, the excitement dulls, the connection breaks or transforms. Yet the feeling does not disappear, it reappears again and again, with different faces, voices, and circumstances. This is not coincidence. This is karma in motion. Love, in its deepest form, is the echo of the soul's longing to unite, to grow, to remember. But karma, the law of cause and effect across lifetimes, makes sure that this longing is never random. We are drawn, magnetized, toward those who activate something incomplete in us. Each time love arrives, it carries not just the potential for happiness, but the imperative for awakening. It arrives wrapped in beauty, but beneath that wrapping are lessons we've left unfinished, ignored, or avoided. And until those lessons are integrated, love will return again and again, looping like a song we haven't learned the words to. This repetition is rarely obvious at first. On the surface, it seems like new people, new dynamics, new circumstances. But beneath it all, the patterns persist. The emotional reactions feel familiar. The challenges repeat. The same insecurities rise, the same wounds reopen, the same fears are stirred. We might say, why does this always happen to me? Or why do I keep attracting the same type of person? The answer is simple, because the lesson hasn't been learned. And until it is, love will keep returning in different clothes to teach it. Some loves are sweet and short, others are long and turbulent. Some arrive in joy, others in heartbreak. But each one plays a role. Each one is part of the cycle of repetition that slowly chisels the soul into a fuller, more aware version of itself. The partner who leaves without explanation may be returning to reflect our abandonment wound. The one who loves us deeply, but is emotionally distant, may mirror our fear of intimacy. The one who cheats, the one who clings, the one who withdraws, all are messengers carrying karmic letters from past timelines. And every time they arrive, the letter says the same thing in different handwriting: learn, evolve, release. This repetition is not punishment. It is design. Karma is not cruel. It is consistent. It doesn't care how long it takes or how many lifetimes it spans. Its only aim is resolution. It is a sculptor, returning with chisel in hand, not to hurt, but to refine. And love is its sharpest tool, because nothing exposes us, opens us, or unravels us like love does. It softens the ego's shell. It makes us vulnerable, raw, receptive. And in that vulnerability, the lessons can finally enter. But the ego resists repetition. It wants novelty. It wants the illusion of progress. It says, this time will be different. And yet, if the inner work hasn't been done, nothing changes. The same arguments resurface. The same disappointments creep in. The names and addresses change, but the emotional landscape remains identical. We keep finding ourselves in familiar pain, wondering why. It is only when we stop looking at love as a source of comfort and start seeing it as a mirror of evolution that we begin to understand. Some people marry the same energy 3 times. Others live with it for decades, trapped in the cycle, thinking it is loyalty or destiny. But love that repeats without growth becomes suffering. What once felt like destiny starts to feel like a curse. This is the shadow of karma, the weight of lessons left unlearned, and the only way out is through awareness. Awareness begins with recognition. When we start to notice the patterns, how we shut down when criticized, how we cling when we feel unloved, how we chase those who are unavailable, we begin to trace the thread. We begin to realize that it's not the partner that matters most, it's what they represent, what they awaken, what they mirror. And from that place of recognition, the possibility of choice emerges. We can pause before reacting. We can respond differently. We can speak instead of staying silent. We can walk away instead of staying stuck. Each new act is a step out of repetition and into resolution. But resolution does not mean escape. It does not mean cutting ties and pretending the past didn't happen. It means integration. To truly learn the lesson of love, we must feel the full spectrum of it. The ecstasy, the grief, the fear, the joy, and find within ourselves the capacity to hold it all without being destroyed by it. This is emotional maturity. This is karmic wisdom. When we stop demanding that love make us happy and start asking how love can make us whole, we step out of the loop. Sometimes, love repeats across lifetimes with the same soul. 2 people meet again and again, in different bodies, in different eras, bound by unfinished chords. What was betrayal becomes forgiveness. What was longing becomes presence. What was rejection becomes acceptance. These are soul contracts designed not for romantic completion, but for spiritual resolution, and often the intensity of these connections is overwhelming. We feel like we've known them forever. We feel pulled to them with a gravity we can't explain. These are the relationships that challenge us the most, not because they are broken, but because they are sacred. And yet, even sacred love can be hard. Sometimes, the lesson is not in staying, but in letting go. Not all karmic love is meant to last. Some is meant to crack us open, to shatter our illusions, to show us who we are when everything we cling to is taken away. This is not cruelty. This is grace. Love that ends painfully may be completing a cycle. It may be the final loop before the pattern dissolves. The pain is real, but beneath it is freedom. Freedom comes when we stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What did this teach me about myself?" Every heartbreak contains a key. Every loss contains a mirror. Every repetition contains a message. And once we receive the message, truly receive it, not just intellectually, but emotionally, energetically, the pattern begins to dissolve. The next time love appears, it carries a different frequency. The old charge is gone. The magnetism softens. We are no longer pulled by need, but guided by clarity. This is how karma heals, not through avoidance, not through force, but through awareness. Through conscious engagement with the very patterns we used to run from. Love is not here to entertain us. It is here to transform us, and its repetition is its mercy. It keeps returning, giving us chance after chance, until we are ready to listen, ready to learn, ready to let go. And when we finally do learn the lesson, when we meet love not with desperation, but with presence, not with attachment, but with openness, something shifts. The partners we attract begin to change. The conversations feel different. The dynamics soften. We no longer feel like victims of love's cycle. We become participants in love's evolution. The karma begins to lift like fog clearing from a mountain path. But even then, the learning never ends. Love continues to refine us. Even in the healthiest relationship, the mirror remains. It simply becomes clearer, more compassionate, less reactive. We begin to see our partner not as the source of our happiness or pain, but as a fellow traveler on the road of awakening. We stop blaming them for our emotions. We take responsibility for our triggers. We become less interested in being right and more interested in being real. And real love, the kind that grows out of karmic integration, is not dramatic or possessive or chaotic. It is grounded, it is honest, it is humble, it knows that both people are still learning. It does not demand perfection, but it insists on awareness. It holds space for change. It forgives often. It laughs easily. It listens deeply, and in that space the old cycles find no foothold. The patterns dissolve, the repetition ends. That is the gift of love's return. Not to trap us, but to wake us up. To keep knocking until we open. To keep breaking until we soften. To keep returning until we are ready to stay. Not in a fantasy, not in a projection, but in the raw, sacred reality of connection, where love is not just a feeling, but a practice. Not just an experience, but a path. Marriage is not a contract of comfort. It is an initiation of transformation. In the popular imagination, marriage is often seen as a culmination, reward for love found, a place to rest, a container for security and companionship. The wedding, the vows, the rituals all seem to suggest stability, a kind of closure on longing, a promise of peaceful continuity. But this perception is limited. Marriage, in its deeper function, is not an arrival point. It is a doorway. It is not the end of yearning, but the beginning of reckoning. It is not merely the union of two people for pleasure or partnership. but an alchemical process that reshapes identity, excavates shadow, and accelerates evolution. That is why so many are drawn to marriage, and why so many are broken by it. Because beneath the surface rituals lies a fire, and fire does not comfort, fire transforms. The transformation that marriage initiates is not gentle. It is not designed to preserve the self we were before it began. In fact, it often dismantles that self. Because what comes into the marriage is not only the individual, who they think they are, what they want, what they believe, but also their history, their trauma, their karmic imprints, their ancestral echoes. The soul does not marry lightly. It draws the other with surgical precision, seeking the exact friction required to break open the illusions we carry. And in this way, the partner is not merely a companion, they are a catalyst. They are the vessel through which our deepest patterns will be revealed, confronted, and, if we are willing, transformed. There is discomfort in this. There is shock, grief, anger, confusion, because so often the one we marry is not who we thought they were. Or perhaps they are exactly who we thought, but we are not who we believed we would be in their presence. Marriage strips away the projections. The romantic stories begin to collapse under the weight of daily life. The fantasy of perfect love begins to dissolve in the reality of clashing needs, habits, wounds. And yet, this is not failure. It is the beginning of truth. Transformation does not begin until illusion ends. And marriage by design ends illusion. Slowly or suddenly, it peels away the layers. The masks come off. The games become transparent. The ego begins to panic. Because now, in the mirror of the other, we are confronted not only with their flaws, but with our own. Their silence echoes our own fear. Their criticism mirrors our own insecurity. Their distance reflects our own avoidance. And we realize that the discomfort is not coming from them. It is arising within us. They are only the spark. The fire was always ours, but the fire must be honored, because in that burning, something sacred is revealed. The process of marriage as initiation means we do not turn away from the discomfort. We do not run. We do not distract ourselves with blame or escape into fantasy. We stay, we feel, we listen, and in doing so, we begin to shed what is no longer real, the roles we played to be loved, the personas we created to feel safe, the control mechanisms we used to avoid pain. They all begin to melt, and what remains is something raw, vulnerable, real. This is the moment of transformation, not when the partner changes, but when we begin to see clearly. When we begin to take responsibility for our reactions, our triggers, our projections. When we stop trying to control the other and begin to examine the self. When we begin to realize that marriage was never about the other completing us, but about the other confronting us, gently or fiercely, with the parts of ourselves we abandoned. And yet, transformation is not linear. It is cyclical, spiraling, often chaotic. We may awaken one day with clarity and compassion, only to fall back the next into resentment or despair. This too is part of the process, because marriage is not a spiritual bypass, it is a spiritual crucible. It brings up everything we thought we had outgrown. It revisits every childhood wound, every fear of failure, every belief about love and worth and identity. It tests us not through drama, but through repetition. The same argument, the same withdrawal, the same distance. Not because we are stuck, but because we have not yet integrated the lesson. In this way, the transformation initiated by marriage is not external, it is internal. We may try to fix the relationship by fixing the partner, but true change only happens when we turn inward, when we recognize that the patterns will follow us from one relationship to another unless we face them now. When we begin to ask not, how can I make this work, but what is being asked of me here, then marriage becomes a teacher, not a burden, not a trap, but a mirror that never lies, Some will resist this. They will say, marriage should make me happy. But the truth is, happiness in marriage is a byproduct, not a guarantee. It is the fruit of deep work, of mutual reflection, of shared vulnerability. And often, it arrives not through ease, but through pain transmuted into understanding. Because what marriage offers is not always comfort, it is capacity. It is the stretching of the soul into dimensions it never knew it could reach. It is the fire that turns stone into sculpture, raw self into conscious being. And yet, there is beauty in the discomfort. There is tenderness in the struggle, because in those moments of rupture, those sleepless nights, those slammed doors, those tearful silences, we are offered a choice. We can collapse into our habitual responses, or we can rise into new awareness. We can weaponize the pain, or we can use it as medicine. We can defend our egos, or we can open our hearts. These choices are not always easy, but each one marks a turning point in the alchemy of transformation. The marriage that transforms is not always the one that lasts forever. Longevity is not the measure of success. Depth is. Presence is. Honesty is. Some marriages last a lifetime because both partners commit to evolving together, embracing the fire without trying to control its direction. Others end when the transformation is complete, when the karmic lesson has been integrated. There is no failure in this, only completion, because the soul did not come to this earth to keep promises at the cost of truth. It came to grow, and marriage, when honored as initiation, becomes one of its most powerful tools. Even the simple, mundane aspects of married life, cooking, cleaning, parenting, bills, are not outside the initiation. They are part of it, because it is in the mundane that the ego often hides. It is in the repetition that unconscious patterns linger. It is in the roles we play daily that the soul's transformation is tested. Can we meet the ordinary with sacredness? Can we bring awareness to the habitual? Can we stay present in the boredom, the frustration, the fatigue? This is where transformation lives, not only in grand moments of crisis, but in the quiet choosing of love when it's inconvenient, difficult, or unreciprocated. And when transformation takes root, when we begin to change not just how we relate to our partner, but how we relate to ourselves, the ripple is felt far beyond the marriage. It touches our children, our friends, our communities. Because a transformed being radiates clarity, a transformed being does not project pain onto others. A transformed being becomes a presence of stability in a world of confusion. This is the gift of marriage as initiation, not only for the individual, but for the collective. Yet none of this happens automatically. The wedding is not the initiation. The commitment is not the transformation. It is the work, the daily, breath-by-breath work of showing up honestly, listening deeply, speaking truthfully, and feeling fully. It is the courage to let go of the need to be right, the strength to apologize when it hurts the pride, the patience to hold space for the other's growth, the humility to admit when we are wrong, and perhaps most of all, the willingness to be changed, not by force, but by love. Because love, when real, will transform us. It will not leave us as it found us. It will not cater to our smallness. It will demand expansion. It will demand death, not of the body, but of the ego, the story, the false self. And in that death, something astonishing is born, a kind of presence, a kind of peace, a kind of power that comes not from control, but from surrender, not from dominance, but from devotion. This is not the language of fairy tales. It is the language of the soul, and the soul does not want ease. It wants truth. It wants depth. It wants to burn and to rise and to become more than it was. Marriage in its sacred form is the fire that makes this possible. not because it gives us what we want, but because it gives us what we need. Not because it fixes us, but because it reveals what is still unhealed. Not because it completes us, but because it calls us to complete ourselves.